All right, we are 3 weeks into playing 7 different MMOs from a casual player's perspective, and I thought now would be a good time to kind of stop and take a look at the analytics and the data that I've collected, because now we've basically completed the opening for all of the games, right? We've gotten through the tutorials for the most part. We've gotten out of the beginner starter area, or at least are finished with it and about to get out. You know, they're all basically done. I'm basically ready to just go play the game in all of the games. So let's take a look at the data I've collected. We're going to look at the high points and low points, and we're not necessarily going to cover every specific detail of every analytic. So if you have something you'd like me to, if you see something in the spreadsheet that you'd like me to explain more, please leave me a comment and I'll be happy to respond to you there. So let's take a look at it. Time played is our first tab. Nothing really to take away from this other than, look, I've played them. Milestones. This one's kind of a unique stat for right now, and we may not ever change it or look at it any further. I wanted to measure 3 different things at the beginning of each game. How long it takes after character creation, how long it takes for you to gain control of your character, how long it takes for you to start participating in combat, whether that's a training dummy or actual, you know, fighting wolves or kobolds or stuff like that, and how long it takes before you're free, like done with the tutorial zone, done with the super linear, opening path, so to speak. And that one is a little subjective and could be a little fuzzy in some games, but I did my best guesstimation at where the point of freedom was. A couple points to take away from this. To no surprise of anyone, Final Fantasy XIV is in the red for every statistic. The ultimate winner altogether is Guild Wars 2, where you are free in 11 minutes. Now, there's a negative to this we'll probably talk about in a little bit. The big thing I want to point out here is, yes, Lord of the Rings Online, RuneScape, and WoW all had longer time to freedom compared to Final Fantasy XIV, but there's a huge difference there. In those games, in Lotro, RuneScape, and WoW, you were doing things. You were in a tutorial zone. You were in a starter area. In Final Fantasy XIV, that 1 hour and 33 minutes was 1 hour and 25 minutes of dialogue. And every second of Battleron should count for double or triple the length of time. So that's huge marks against Final Fantasy XIV there, because, again, even though it's, 40 minutes shorter than Lotro and RuneScape, my time in Lotro and RuneScape seemed much faster. But anyways, those are the milestones. I'm considering putting a milestone timer for mount, but probably not, because not all of the games I don't think have mounts, or at least not mounts for a free-to-play player, which I'm trying to do this as free-to-play as possible for each game. Anyways, I digress. Let's move on to money. Here is the money that I've collected for each game. The one time I lost money so far was Final Fantasy XIV, because I used the teleporter. And so it dropped my money down significantly. But yeah, there's nothing really major to look at here. One note to make on this, though: in any game that has gold, silver, copper, it's just dollars, right? So if we look at Guild Wars 2 here, oh wait, no, that's a bad one to look at because I'm having to do math to figure out Guild Wars 2. Let's look at ESO, right? Or no, this is a better one. Lotro, 2,477 currency here means 77 copper, 24 gold, because that's how it translates, because 100 copper is 1 silver, 100 silver is 1 gold. The difference here is WoW's currency, you end up with a lot more of it, so I converted it and made copper cents and then dollars after that. So this is 8 gold, 11 silver, 9 copper, but that doesn't come out to 81,109. That's 811.09. So just be aware of that. I had to do some conversion. The purpose for that was to keep the chart from blowing up, which, as you can see, it already did because of some it'll become even more blown up in week 4, because in Elder Scrolls Online I get a daily reward of like 5,000 gold or something like that. Anyways, level progression, again, we're doing this based on percentages, so we can see the lowest percentage we've achieved so far is RuneScape, where we've reached 2.63. The highest percentage we have reached is WoW, and Guild Wars 2 is not far behind it at 15.71%. This is a little concerning for me from a casual player perspective, because I'm 15% of the way through leveling in WoW. I am very close already. I would suspect in the next month or so, I will be having to pay the WoW subscription, which is going to be a huge negative for WoW. So this will be interesting to follow. Gear purchase, nothing major to look at here. I've only purchased a few items so far, but now is a good time to point out I'm going to start having 2 charts on a lot of these. One is, this is just the per episode purchasing. This is the cumulative purchasing. So this shows us that in total so far, we have bought 3 pieces of gear in Guild Wars 2, and we have bought 1 piece of gear in, is that Elder Scrolls? Wow. Looted gear, same sort of situation. And then here we have the numbers for the cumulative. Here we can see the most gear the game we've looted the most in is actually Lotro, and the game we've looted the least in is Final Fantasy XIV. One thing to point out here is in Elder Scrolls, I reduced this number by half in the first episode because I really only looted 2 pieces of gear that replaced the starter gear. Because in Elder Scrolls Online, you start off as a prisoner, you start off with nothing, and then you're given a weapon, and then you easily, and I started a second character, and I discovered it exists in way more places than I found it in the first playthrough. But it's very easy to just stumble upon an entire set of armor. They're literally just sitting there for you. I missed the first few. When I found it, I had already passed it like 8 times. So I docked that points and reduced it, because it really is just starter gear. It should not count as looted gear. That was a little unfair. But yeah, so this is the statistic I'm really interested in following. Now we get into the subjective data, okay? Let's look at solo ability. For the most part, everything's been 10s. You'll see Star Wars The Old Republic and WoW got 8s. Star Wars, because I needed a player's help, because I died. They didn't help me, but I needed the help. And then WoW, I had to go through the tutorial dungeon. Now, technically, it probably would have let me do it by myself if no one else was waiting for a group, because NPCs come in and help you with the dungeon. But everything else has been 10s, except for Final Fantasy. I'm docking Final Fantasy even on solo ability in episode 1 because it was nothing but dialogue. It gets a 1 on solo ability because there was nothing to be done. I couldn't solo anything. So it's kind of an unfair negative points to give or whatever, but it's what I'm going to do. Same thing here as well while we're on that subject. For character progression, our next spreadsheet, it gets a 1 on that as well because there was no character to be progressed. I was just reading. This one's kind of interesting, and again, it's very subjective and it's per episode. Like, look at this chart. Look at the chart, how it's all right. But if we look down here, so this one is kind of twofold, right? And actually, now's probably a good time for me to say this. I highly encourage all of you, do this. Unless you're like already like super into your MMO and you're like, I don't want another MMO. I'm just curious about learning about other MMOs from other people like me. That's fine. That's fine. But I encourage everyone, go through this process. Play other MMOs all at the same time, giving them equal amounts of time, because what will happen is you will learn what makes you tick. You will learn what part of MMOs is the part that you love and you want out of your games. I have discovered this already, and I'm still fleshing it out in my mind, but the gist of it is this. I've discovered I want my character to become a character. I want my character to get a personality, to get a look, to feel like me. I want it to feel like, or at least a character, something that I have created. Visibly is an important part, but also functionally. I'm discovering I love when I can tinker with a build, and I love when I can tinker with a look. Probably the latter more than the former. I'm pretty vain, I'm discovering. I want to walk into an MMO and get to the first major city and look around and go, I want to look like that guy and that guy. I want to be cool looking like them. I want those shoulders. Those are awesome. That's what I need from an MMO in the beginning. And then gradually what I need is the MMO to say, okay, here's your character, but here are some options. Here are some choices. Here are some skill trees, basically is what I'm talking about, right? I want, I think Guild Wars 2 does it well. I think WoW does it well. The other ones, I'm honestly not super sure about yet. Elder Scrolls Online has potential, but a lot of them are so far just kind of okay, here's your next skill. Okay, here's your next skill. And sometimes those skills, Lotro, feel the same. Like, I feel like I have 3 or 4 skills on Lotro that all do the same thing. That doesn't make for good character progression. So, anyways, that's a little spoiler to how I'm feeling about what I like, what I want out of an MMO, but that doesn't really answer the question, what is the best casual MMO? So it's not really a spoiler to the end of the series, just kind of my personal end to it. But anyway, so character progression, this is a big deal for me. ESO has been giving. Like, now this is almost completely skills. Like, my character has felt like they're progressing at a good pace in those first 3 episodes. I'm getting some good skills. I'm getting options of health, stamina, magic, right? I am getting to choose from skill trees, even though they don't look like skill trees. So ESO's doing a great job with character progression, but so is WoW, so is Guild Wars 2. Star Wars, this is where it starts to get tapered off. RuneScape, Final Fantasy 14, Lotro, pfft. Okay, moving on. Sorry, I spent a lot of time on character progression, but I think that's a very important statistic. I'm discovering it's a very important statistic. Okay, combat. Final Fantasy 14, no surprise, gets a 1 on week 1. Lotro actually is doing really poorly in combat. Really poorly. The top winner cumulatively for combat is Guild Wars 2. No surprise there. I'm a little biased. Listen, in terms of fun, moment-to-moment gameplay, combat, I think Guild Wars 2 is without a rival. It is fluid. It is fun to find the synergies between actions and your abilities. I think the most important thing is it's fluid. It feels fluid. All of this has one major caveat, which we'll get to in a minute. You have to discover Action Camp, because the game doesn't tell you about the most important feature in the game. The game doesn't tell you about it, and veterans will tell you, well, that was a feature that was just added on as like a pet project from someone who doesn't even work at ArenaNet anymore. I don't care. It makes the game better. I don't care about if in world versus world and PvP, if you have a higher skill ceiling without it. I don't care. Don't use it in those. But tell people about it for open world and literally every other part of the game, because Action Cam is objectively better for almost every instance. And yeah, sure, I could be convinced that for higher, like an elementalist, you know, who does a lot of AoE and needs to click on the ground in various places a lot, I could be convinced that tab targeting is better than Action Cam for those specific instances. But every other time, Action Cam is better. But anyways, here's your list of combat comparisons. It's a sad day when Lotro's combat is worse than RuneScape. And I do love RuneScape's combat, but it's an idle game. Exploration. Big takeaway here is Elder Scrolls Online feels very empty, and it's very unfortunate. It may just be the town I've been in at the beginning, but the town I've been in at the beginning of Elder Scrolls Online has been horribly just void of any life whatsoever. But again, this is a score that means less right now because we're in the beginning of the game. I don't expect to do much. Story, this is pretty important because the game needs to grip you with a good story, you know, if that matters to you. The top here is Elder Scrolls Online. Choosing Somerset, what starting area I chose, which technically cost me money to access it. Technically, that plays a huge role here, because I'm playing that specific storyline. I love it, though. I think it's terrific. I think it is the best opening, grip you story of any of these MMOs. Roz is such a cool character to, work with. So we go down, middle of the road, Guild Wars 2. We'll come back and talk about that. Then below that, Final Fantasy 14. All of that Battleron dialogue is the pits. And then RuneScape basically has no story as far as I'm aware. I know that's not true, but the game doesn't do much to give it to you, so I don't really need it, so I don't care. Guild Wars 2. Here's what Guild Wars 2, no, we're going to come back to this in a second. Why Guild Wars 2 is in the middle and what it needs to do different with its story at this point in the playthrough. Ease of use. This has a lot to do with tutorials at this point. WoW is up there. WoW is really efficient with its tutorials. It's really good about showing you things. It's really good about continuing to remind you, when you have a skill point available. It does a great job at reminding you in a not too obnoxious or obtrusive way. ESO as well does a great job with tutorials. Star Wars: The Old Republic had a really rough start because of all the pop-ups, but it did all right. Lotro, nah. RuneScape, nah. They're not. The RuneScape and Lotro, the issue with ease of use is it's just not pretty or intuitive user interface that you're dealing with, right? Yeah, that's my problem with those. Overall fun factor, you would think this is more important than it is, and it kind of relates to the next spreadsheet we're going to look at, which is the most important spreadsheet to look at. They kind of work in tandem, but this is actually, I'm finding, less helpful than I thought it would be. But it's okay. WoW is up top. I'm really enjoying WoW. And then ESO below that. Actually, I think WoW and Guild Wars 2 are tied. Yeah, Guild Wars 2 and WoW are both tied up there at the top. I can just only see Guild Wars 2 right there. And then Lotro is the one I'm enjoying the least. Okay, so here we go. This spreadsheet. This is the most... Can I zoom in on this? Make sure y'all can see this real good. Let me make sure y'all can see this real good. This is the most important spreadsheet of the entire series. Okay? After I play through every game in a week, or as I play through a game in a week. If I want to get back in and play it again, I plop it here. So let's say I really enjoyed ESO and I want to play it some more. But then I play Final Fantasy 14 and it was kind of a downer and I'm like, I don't really want to play that again. But then as I play, if then I go to Guild Wars 2 and I'm like, man, I'm in a really good part of the Guild Wars 2 story, so let me move ESO here and let me move Guild Wars 2 here, right? This spreadsheet shows us my desire to play the game again. And it's kind of fascinating because week 1, boy, I was really itching to get into RuneScape. We're going to quickly look through each game's progression in the first 3 weeks. I was really itching to play more RuneScape. We got through Tutorial Island, and like I was just getting into it, and I was ready to do more. And then week 2, and this is really funny because as I played it, I did enjoy it more. But between week 2 and week 3, I kind of quickly got my fill. And what this has to do with is the desire for me to play this game is more secondary, right? Normally my desire to watch YouTube videos is secondary. Think of it as what's on my secondary monitor, what's on my primary monitor. RuneScape is a heavy secondary monitor game for where I'm at right now anyways. So that's why I kind of started falling down the list. I want to play it, but not really. I want to play it, but I don't want to focus on it. That's a good way to put it. But then WoW has stayed up at the top. WoW's new starting zone is incredible. Oh man, I need to wrap this up. This is too long. WoW's starting zone is incredible. Guild Wars 2, middle of the pack now. You might be thinking, but Kyle, you're biased toward Guild Wars 2. No, it's actually kind of the opposite in this chart. Guild Wars 2 is probably lower than you would think because I am still playing my other characters. I'm still playing my main and some other alts. So like I'm still playing Guild Wars 2. So this is more of a question of how much am I wanting to play Filthy Casual Kyle in Guild Wars 2. So Guild Wars 2 is kind of getting lowered on this chart, which is fine. Final Fantasy 14, really, the reason it wasn't lower the first week is because I knew better was coming. I knew the dialogue was ending. I knew there would soon be quests. And then week 2 happened, and there were quests, and it was great. Week 3, honestly, if you look at the 3rd, 4th, and 5th slots in the spreadsheet, they are almost interchangeable. So don't think of Final Fantasy 14 as being less interesting than Star Wars The Old Republic in week 3. It's just Star Wars just got the edge over it. But Final Fantasy 14, I can tell you after week 4, it's heading back up toward the top. I'm really enjoying some of the silly little quests we're doing. ESO, as much as I'm enjoying it, something about it, and I'm almost positive it's the lifeless feeling of the world. It's not quite pulling me back in. Like I'm enjoying it, but like every time I'm in it, I'm like, ugh. I hope this changes soon. I hope when I go to another town, I see more life, not just more players, but better NPCs. A lot of the NPCs are just standing there, and they're few and far between. Lotro, it's never the worst. It's never the one I want to keep playing the least. The Cinderella story here is Star Wars The Old Republic. I hated the beginning of Star Wars The Old Republic. Hated it. Star Wars The Old Republic and Lord of the Rings Online in particular have this problem. I don't know if I'm going to use everybody's favorite term. I don't know if ludonarrative dissonance is the right term for it. I think it is. The game's like, oh no, something terrible is happening. Here's a tutorial, read this. It's like, no, but you just told me I need to run and go do this thing. Why are you, couldn't you have shown me this in another way? And then in Lotro, in episode 3, right, Archette is being attacked by bandits and it's on fire. And John, you have to go with John Brackenbrook. And we're like, John Brackenbrook, what are we going to do? And John's like, we got to go in there and we got to fight the bandits. And you're like, okay. And so the game puts you there. And your quest objective is talk to John Brackenbrook. And it's like, I was just talking to John Brackenbrook. Okay, let me go talk to John Brackenbrook. And John Brackenbrook says, Kyle, my uncle is in there. We have to go save him. Okay, let's go save him. Let's do this. So, okay, you talk through the dialogue and then you run in there. You kill 3 bandits. And then the game tells you a new quest objective. Talk to John Brackenbrook. I thought we were fighting bandits. Okay, go over to John. John, what's up? And John's like, Filthy Casual Kyle. We have to save my uncle. We have to save Archette. We have to kill the bandits. Okay, let's go. Let's go kill the bandits. So you go in a little bit further and you kill 3 bandits. And then guess what the game tells you to do? Talk to John Brackenbrook. So you go talk to John Brackenbrook and you do this like 3 or 4 times. It's like, game. I get it. We're going to go fight bandits. Would you stop stopping me from doing the thing that you're telling me is so important? Lotro and Star Wars The Old Republic have done that. Star Wars The Old Republic did it in the 1st episode. Lord of the Rings Online did it in the 3rd episode. And I hate that so much. Now, let's talk about bonus points real quick, and I'm really only going to talk about like one thing in particular. Guild Wars 2 lost 10 bonus points in week 1. Here's why. 1, doesn't tell you about Action Cam. 2, this goes back to the story. I appreciate that you are free to go do whatever you want in Guild Wars 2 immediately. I appreciate that. But I think as soon as you're free, it does need to give you the direction of, hey, so-and-so wants to talk to you. Go find her. She's over here in this little village. And so you're given an objective to go explore and find this village and talk to this person. And then maybe the person tells you, hey, I'm going to need your help, but I'm not quite ready for you yet. I will summon you, when I'm ready, but we need to go fight so-and-so or take care of this or that. So now you've set up the story. You've set up who to go talk to for the story, but you're free to go do other things. Instead, what the game does is the game just kind of plops you out into the world. You talk to a scout, ideally. The game doesn't make you do that, but it kind of suggests that you do that. And the scout helps you see where to go do hearts. And so you go do hearts and you go fight. And eventually you level up high enough that the game's like, hey, you can start the story now. And you're like, wait, what? I can? There was no setup for why I'm ready to start the story now. So I think the game needs to give you a story, just the littlest bit of push into the story from the off, right? As soon as you're free. So Guild Wars 2 lost 10 points because of Action Cam and the story, the lack of like just giving some sort of direction. Yeah. So real quick, I have some notes of 2 things, and I've kind of talked about these already, but just to summarize, I want to talk about what each game is doing right and what each game needs to improve upon for the early game specifically. Elder Scrolls Online, what it's doing right, the story, the characters, and the voice acting. I am loving the voice acting, the camera for the NPC dialogue, like everything about the NPC interactions in Elder Scrolls Online is top tier, my favorite of any of the games. What it needs to do better, I've said it, lifeless cities. The lifeless cities, and it feels lifeless between quests. Like when I'm doing a quest, when I'm working with Roz or the Sijic Order or whatever, like it feels fine then. But then as soon as I'm released from a quest, the game is back to feeling lifeless. Final Fantasy XIV. Final Fantasy XIV has an infectious buzz. It has infectious activity going on. When you're in the town around the Aetheryte Shard, right? And you literally hear the crowd, but you see the crowd. There's people everywhere. It is the complete opposite of Elder Scrolls Online. Also, quest availability. Those are the 2 big things that Final Fantasy XIV does right. What it needs to fix, obviously dialogue, but that's kind of my problem. Because if I were just playing the game and just reading it, it wouldn't be as annoying, but it's made doubly annoying for me because I'm having to read it. I'm having to read it live in one take, trying to do one take with the right inflections and the right understanding of what the person is saying, but they've added so much improper grammar for the sake of character that it sucks to try and read out loud. It really does. Also, I'd like to see some improvement in the combat. Final Fantasy XIV combat is par. Maybe slightly above par. And I'm assuming it'll get better. I just wish there was a bit more to it right now. Guild Wars 2. Honestly, my biggest thing with Guild Wars 2 to compliment them about, which I just realized. Let's go back to this screen. I love this spreadsheet so much. How easy it is in Guild Wars 2 to hop in and hop out. Because the questing is so open-ended, I don't feel like, oh, well, I've killed 3 of these 7 things. I don't know if it's okay for me to like log out here. Like, I feel like I should probably finish this quest before I log off. Guild Wars 2, it's like, I'm almost done with this heart. Let me just walk over here, log off, and I'll be fine when I log back on. It's, it's not a big deal. And yeah, part of that is me understanding the game, but I'm also kind of going back to when I was a pure noob at Guild Wars 2. And that's what sold me on it, was how easy it was to hop in and out. Guild Wars 2, things it needs to improve upon. Teach and encourage action cam, obviously. I argue, make action cam default. Change my mind. Also start the story sooner, as I discussed earlier. Lord of the Rings Online. The best thing it has going for it is the potential. And that's a bit like the opposite of like being in a job interview and asking, what are your greatest weaknesses? And you pull a Michael Scott, well, I care too much. I work too hard. It's the opposite of that. What's the best thing about Lotro? It has potential. She's got a great personality. Like, the world. That's a good way to put it. The world of Lord of the Rings Online, I know, is the shining star of the game. And so the potential of being able to go be a part of that world is huge. I just haven't had that opportunity yet. What it needs to do better? There's a lot Lotro needs to do better. But here's what it needs to do better that it can do, and they have no excuse that they haven't done it yet. They need to clean up some of the rough edges. Right? The UI, the icons, the maps. It is a crime that the maps, now granted, I've only seen 2 of them. It's a crime that the maps in Lord of the Rings Online look as bad as they do. There is no excuse for a Tolkien property media to have bad maps. It's pitiful. RuneScape, I love the simplicity. That's what it's really doing right. It's simple. What it needs to do better, there is a detrimental lack of direction. Remember, I was kind of saying that about Guild Wars 2. In Guild Wars 2, though, it's not detrimental. It's just a little confusing at first. RuneScape, this last episode, I feel like I left it at a very negative note. Oh my goodness, we're at 30 minutes. I'm so sorry, y'all. I feel like we left it at a very negative note. And I know what I'm going to do in episode 4. But there were just there was a series of events in RuneScape that I felt like what the game was having me do was just leading to disappointment. And I think I just need to go talk to characters and see if any of them have a quest for me. But this is my thing with RuneScape, though. Where I am right now, like, I've walked around a good bit outside of what I thought was a town, and all I've found is more town. It feels like. I found a barbarian encampment village thing, and they were bad guys, but they just told me, hey, you shouldn't be here. Like, they didn't like fight me or anything. I found one spider, and it wasn't even in the wild. It was just in an area slightly between 2 buildings, kind of 2 towns. So I feel like I'm like looking at it going, where do I go do stuff? This is just more shops and castles and places that I can't get into, whether because I don't have the right item, don't have the right skill, or haven't paid for the subscription. So I'm left sitting there going like, well, game, what do you have for me? Like, I genuinely don't know. And maybe I have to go talk to characters, and maybe I have to go get Slay quest from what's his face. I don't know. Star Wars, what it's doing right, similar to ESO, the story, the voice acting, but also the art style. And also the potential. Star Wars, to me, is the most shocking game that I'm enjoying. I was not expecting to enjoy it as much as I have been. But the potential in Star Wars is different than the potential in Lord of the Rings Online, right? Because the potential in Star Wars is, okay, I can see where this is going. I can't wait to like get a lightsaber and be a Jedi and do stuff like that. But then there's, wait, you're telling me I get to own a ship? Wait, there's a hangar? You mean I can own multiple ships? And then there's like some ship combat? There's like a whole other game here that like I didn't know existed. So I'm really excited about that. What it needs to do better: character progression, character customization, and mounts. I need a mount really bad. There's a lot of walking back and forth in this game. Although someone did tell me, I think it was in Star Wars, that there is a sprint, and I need to look it up. There is a sprint button that I didn't know about, or a sprint skill maybe. Finally, World of Warcraft. What it's doing great is character customization. Visually, I love the character designs in World of Warcraft. I always have. I love the big, bulky Pixar style. Also, the new start zone, really, really good. But not just visually, by the way, for character customization. The skill trees very early on feel great. Like you're making decisions. There's immediately lots of options for you to choose from and customize, and I love it. And good options for passive or active abilities. What it needs to do better: release me. In the words of Brent Spiner from Independence Day, release me. Let me go. The starting zone is good, but it's a bit long. I'm ready to get into it. And that's the other thing that's a negative against World of Warcraft. I'm quickly approaching the subscription level. I got halfway there, and I was still in the tutorial zone. It's a little unfortunate. I feel like they need to extend the free-to-play level to like 30 or something. 20 is way too fast. So what I'm doing is, FYI, I've been playing 2 other characters on World of Warcraft off camera, because when I do have to pay for a subscription, you better believe I'm going to be trying to get as much out of that monthly fee as I can. So I'm getting as many characters as I can up to level 20 as fast as I can, so that I have lots of characters to play and use I don't want to waste my money. So anyways, that's it. Sorry that this was so long, but it's still 12 minutes shorter than the last one was. So thank you all so much for watching. Thank you for joining me on this journey. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you are enjoying. I hope you do this as well, because it's really fun and educational. And let me tell you, even if you only do it for 3 weeks, you will learn a lot about why you play MMORPGs. We'll see you next time. Adios. Goodbye.